Okay, so Julian Edelman retired.
Okay, all right. So the reason why I brought this up, Julian Edelman retiring. The reason why I brought this up is because it starts a conversation that I actually want to have because it's a perfect example of why this should be a thing. So I think right off the bat, Julian Edelman should be a Hall of Famer. I just want to make that statement outright so we
No.
know where we stand. Yes. Now, you will see by the end of this. I will convince you, Dylan. And this is good. This is a perfect little I can convince you that he is a Hall of Famer because he is. So, one thing I want to point out, this picture right here, Warren Sharp. I love Warren Sharp, by the way. Warren Sharp's one of the best if you want to know anything analytically about the NFL, Warren Sharp, he also you can follow social media, go to his website. He also sells like his advice and stuff because he's pretty accurate as far as betting goes. He's probably one of the best analytically at making bets and everything. Him and Crack, I can't remember what his name is, starts with a K, but he's got an app too. Those two are incredible. They pull in, six figures plus on seasons just alone on their betting. So that's a guy that you want to follow if you're into sports betting deeply. Uh, but he did come out with this statistic, which is interesting, and which is why probably Julian Edelman's not going to get in the Hall of Fame, because sometimes the stats are a little ridiculous and don't really represent the player, which is I'll get into. But this right here, he posted basically comparing him to Hines Ward, which Hines Ward is a guy who can't make the final ballot in the Hall of Fame voting the last 5 years, which is ridiculous because Hines Ward was Hines Ward and was like an iconic player for the Steelers for years. So right off the bat, catches Hines Ward first career 1,000, Julian Edelman 620. Obviously a lot less. Hines Ward 12,083 yards, Julian Edelman only 6,822 yards. Touchdowns, Hines has 85. Julian Edelman. Wow, I'm mixing these names up. Julian Edelman has 36. Again, less than Hines Ward. You want to flip over to the second image. So yes, I understand that. Super Bowls, they both have one. Super Bowl MVPs, I should say. Julian Edelman, I think, has more Super Bowls, but they at least both have one. So they both were that much of a contributor to the team that they won the MVP trophy. And Pro Bowls, Julian Edelman doesn't have four compared to Heinz Ward. Now, what those don't tell you is that Julian Edelman is a lot more than what those stats just show. And the reason why is because unfortunately, these are the stats that probably a lot of voters are going to care about, which is ridiculous because you really should look at a player on an individual basis. Like I could pull up Devin Hester's receiving stats compared to other players that haven't gotten in the Hall of Fame, and I can also, in the same breath, go, "I Devin Hester's a no-brainer at Hall of Fame." Like, in my opinion, at least, I think Devin Hester is a no-brainer Hall of Famer with the way that he changed the game. I mean, he added a position to the Pro Bowl. Like that's how important he was. And so he 100% he's a Hall of Famer. But if you look at his receiving stats and you pull up those kind of statistics, yeah, he doesn't look as good. Whatever. So here's what they don't tell you. And I looked him up because I wanted to cover this because it's insane when you start breaking it down. So in 19 games in the playoffs, Julian Edelman has a total of 118 catches, 1,422 yards, and 7 touchdowns, averaging basically 7 catches a game and 75 yards a game. He also has, like I said, only 7 touchdowns, so he's averaging only like a half a touchdown a game. Obviously, not a big deal when you're contributing in other ways as far as receiving goes. But here is where it gets crazy. Looking at all of his stats, he has the second most playoff catches behind Jerry Rice, who a lot of people, even I considering, or I as well, consider him to be the greatest wide receiver.
Easily.
As far
Not
as
even a
starts,
question.
huh?
Easily, not even a question.
Yeah, he has all the stats and everything like that. Yeah, we can argue like obviously we can argue that like Joel, even guys like Julio Jones
Us.
and Calvin Johnson and Randy Moss have better bodies and everything like that, better receiving. Overall they have just a better like look to them. Like if you were gonna pick a wide receiver, I would probably start with Calvin Johnson. But I'm talking about statistics and winning and everything and consistency and all that. Jerry Rice is the best in all of those things. So number one. So Julian Edelman's second most playoff catches behind Jerry Rice. Julian Edelman's also second most receiving yards in the playoffs behind Jerry Rice. He also has the second most 100-yard games in the playoffs behind Jerry Rice. He also is the fifth most catches in Super Bowl history. He is the fourth most receiving yards in Super Bowl history. He's only second behind Wes Welker for catches in Patriots history. He's fourth most receiving yards for the Patriots in their history, and he has the fourth most all-purpose yards for the Patriots in their history. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's that's what I'm talking about when I say Julian Edelman is a Hall of Famer. It's not just what he's done in the regular season. Regular season, the Patriots are the Patriots. They run the ball a lot. They dump it off to the running backs. They spread the ball out very well across all their wide receivers. And a lot of times too, you have guys that Julian Edelman is competing with as far as yards and these wide receivers that are, getting, obviously higher priority over him. But Julian Edelman plays in the slot too, which again, the slot typically you don't have as many yards as your number one or number two receivers. That's just how it goes. Otherwise, everybody would be a slot receiver. If that's the position that got the most yards, it's not. But he is an all-purpose player, so he did punt returns. I think he did some kick returns, catching the ball out of the
Cornerback.
backfield. Yeah, quarterbacking a few times here and there. He also, I believe, was an undrafted free agent that signed, and that's how he got his start in the NFL. So that's incredible too, because being a UDFA is difficult nonetheless. But being a small UDFA that was a quarterback that then has to convert to a different position is pretty incredible. And then to make all the catches that he did and make the difference that he did in all of the playoffs and Super Bowls. I mean, go back if you want to watch, go back and watch the Falcons game. Who made that catch? Who made that absurd catch
I did
for
rewatch that catch. That was ridiculous. Also,
it's
just to note, cornerback as well as quarterback.
yeah.
Just in
So
case you misheard me, because that's insane.
gotcha. Yeah. So not a wide receiver at all. So then he comes to the NFL, becomes a wide receiver, becomes a slot receiver, becomes one of the best slot receivers, and not only that, becomes one of the best receivers in the playoffs in history. I mean, that's what
Yeah.
we're talking about.
Yeah.
And like you can say all you want about where he was. Like you can say all you want about he was on the Patriots and of course, he has more yards and more catches cuz he played in more Super Bowls. Okay, well Jerry Rice has the same thing, but Jerry Rice is he played in four Super Bowls and won all four because they were the better team. So like you could also say that about a lot of players too, that if you looked at their stats for the one or two Super Bowls they were in and inflated them, that maybe they would contribute. But guess what? The Super Bowls that he did play in, he contributed greatly in, and that's why it's reflected in his stats. I mean, we're talking, like I said, fifth most catches in the Super Bowl for a slot receiver who's not even the primary target of the team because Gronkowski was pretty much the whole time that Edelman was there. If you look at Edelman the last 2 years, did you ever hear Edelman complain in the last 2 years? I mean, yeah, he was out a couple games here and there, but and as well as having some injury problems because he had a major leg injury that was bothering him for the last 2 years. So that plays a factor into it. But just all of it. I mean, Super Bowl MVP being a slot receiver who was a UDFA is ridiculous. I mean, we're talking, very small percentage of guys in history are Super Bowl MVPs are good enough and contribute enough to become Super Bowl MVPs. Literally only 55 of them. And one of them happened to be a UDFA that never played wide receiver. Well, didn't play wide receiver in college. It wasn't supposed to be drafted that way and then became one.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
all
I mean,
that
his
plus
story is awesome for sure. I don't debate that at all. I think that's really cool.
and like I said, people look at these, statistics. Like the Pro Bowl, for instance. Nobody I'm
No one
sorry, but
cares about Pro Bowls.
I'm sorry, but the Pro Bowl is not like players don't even care generally about the Pro Bowl. Like, yeah, it's nice to become a Pro Bowler because then you get that next to your name for the rest of your life. And for a lot of the younger guys, it means more because, if it's their first Pro Bowl, it means a lot more for them because they're getting name recognition across the league as well as into the mass media. So that's where the difference lies. But if you really want a stat that matters, go to all pros. How many all pros does that player have? That's what really matters because that's what actually like voted on based on their production that year and how well they played as opposed to, people at their position. And that's where you start to see the dividing lines. So the fact that Julian Edelman's never been promoted, like gone to a Pro Bowl, I mean, give me a break. I mean, come on, that's stupid. You know how many players that we talk about every year that are like, I can't believe that guy snubbed from the Pro Bowl. Like that happens.
Actually, kind of crazy that he actually was never elected to a Pro Bowl, especially since he's on such a high profile team and like was a high profile player.
Yeah, but you got to remember too, in the Pro Bowl, they don't really have like a slot receiver position. Like it's not its own
Yeah.
position.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just a receiver. So like when you look at his stats as a receiver goes to the rest of the entire NFL, it probably doesn't look as good. But slot receiver has become such a different animal as far as position goes. You know, that it's like that's why like pass rusher is different than outside linebacker now. Like that's why it's called an edge rusher instead of, they might play like Khalil Mack plays left outside linebacker. Well, what is he compared to other left outside linebackers? Probably not the same as far as pass coverage goes, as far as tackles go, total tackles. Like all those stats play into factors for the position. But Khalil Mack is an edge rusher and the second best edge rusher by PFT last year, which is, they file everything together as far as analytically goes. And so you can't tell me that he's not one of the best outside linebackers technically, but it's just because of the position and everything like that. So that's why like the slot receiver is a whole different animal. It's a different position than, the wide receivers on the outside. So it's one of those where it's like, of course he's not going to get in because he doesn't have the stats that those wide receiver one and twos have, and mainly wide receiver ones have everywhere. And especially when Edelman played with Brady, well, Gronk was there too. That doesn't help considering that Gronk was basically his go-to. So,
Yeah.
and then that Patriots offense, while Edelman was there, was predicated on spreading the ball around, and that's what they did all season long was run the ball well and spread the ball around. That's why you had three or four wide receivers getting as many yards as they did, and that's why you get running backs getting the amount of yards and plays they get, and that's why you see like Danny Woodhead going to the Chargers on a good deal because it's like yeah, he contributed for the Patriots, but that's because they spread the ball around so well that everybody looks really good. So Julian Edelman's gonna unfortunately fall victim to that, where they're spreading the ball around, so he's not getting it as much as maybe another team would if he was on the roster. So that's all
Interesting.
I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. That's my argument for why I think he should be a Hall of Famer. Is I think Hall of Fame should really be about what is the player all around. What did they do? Like, yeah, this player didn't perform super well in the regular season, but we can also look at all those factors that I just laid out and realize that, yeah, of course he didn't play well in the regular season because that's just not the position he was set up to be in. And
Like,
so if that's not the case, how did he do in the playoffs? How effective was he for his team, and how important was he? And that's what I think should play a factor. Go ahead.
and
What are you
so I
saying?
guess the discussion that was going to be about that too is like, yeah, okay. Even if you go for the side of like, should he be in the Hall of Fame? I think we both can realistically agree he probably is not going to because of the crazy backlog that wide receivers have.
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah. I mean, if Heinz
Realistically,
Ward, like, unfortunately, there's a lot of people out there that have votes as far as writers and stuff like that that probably shouldn't. And
yeah.
so the fact that they're probably going to look at a lot of statistics like this that we're looking at just on the screen right now, seeing that, oh, Heinz Ward went to the Pro Bowl 4 times over Julian Edelman. There's no way if Heinz Ward didn't get in, being as iconic as Heinz Ward's was, with those Steelers Super Bowl teams, that Julian Edelman doesn't have any Pro Bowls or anywhere near the statistics as far as yards and catches that he does in the regular season. He's not getting in.
Yeah.
He should.
Interesting.
He would if I had he had, like he should be he should if he's not a first ballot Hall of Famer, that's fine. But he should definitely be like in maybe a down year where he's on the list. He should be a no brainer.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's just how I feel. I don't know how you feel after that argument. What do you think about all that?
I like the same way. I still think if there was like a postseason MVP or postseason Hall of Fame for sure, I agree with you that they also definitely distributed the ball a lot more in the regular season because that's exactly what they do. And then in the playoffs, they definitely forced it to them a lot more when it was like crunch time, i.e., like Super Bowl 40, 50, 51. Falcons Patriots Super Bowl. Maybe it was,
No, it had to be 50 because 50 wasn't 50 the one Peyton Manning won? I can't remember. Go ahead.
I think he
Finish your-
won. I think he did win 50, so maybe it was 51.
I'll look it
But
up. You keep talking.
yeah, no, I just think that he like crunched up all those stats in the postseason and
51.
51. Okay, but yeah, I think like should he is a more interesting argument as opposed to will he, because I don't think realistically he will. But I could see what you're saying. I don't know if he has the stats overall for everything, but like in the postseason, he definitely like was a prime player every time. He was super clutch. Like don't even forget about, you didn't mention the Ravens trick play in the divisional, which
Mm-hmm.
was sick. That watching that game live was like I still remember that. Not even being a fan of either team
Yep.
was so much fun. Like in terms of like, I don't know, there's always the argument that people make that's similar to Eli Manning as well, which is like some people like to take the definition of the Hall of Fame being like, if you told the story of the NFL, could they or would they be an integral part of it? Could you not tell it properly without them being a part of it? So on that
Mm-hmm.
basis and like his postseason stats, for sure. If you're going off of like analytics and what people currently have gotten in based on and what the Hall of Fame actually is, no. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah. See, Julian Edelman, 12 years. That's how many years he played.
Wow, it was that long. Damn. Yeah, he really was. He really was around for a while, just behind Welker for so long.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like people don't understand that like his stats are low because they were like he didn't get to play right away. He was behind Welker, and then you had Danny Amendola come over, and Danny Amendola is literally the exact same position. So like he's got to compete with. It's literally the exact same player. I think Edelman's better in my opinion. That's another argument we can have, but I think
Is that?
Edelman's.
That's not even an argument, is it? I mean, like they're
I
both
mean,
super clutch players, but overall,
I'd rather
Edelman.
have Julian Edelman for sure.
Yeah,
But yeah, and then he's not only that, but he had to sit behind Wes Welker. Then Danny Amendola came over. Then he has Ron Gronkowski there the whole time. Plus, they have all those running backs too that were really good for a while there, catching passes and stuff. I mean, White was incredible as a pass catcher out of the backfield for the last couple of years. So like I said, all that to me, in my opinion, if you're actually looking at the entire voting of a player's like, what did a player do during their career and the opportunities that they got, how like my thing when I look at a player is the opportunities that they got, how did they take those opportunities? Like how well did they
yeah,
perform when given the opportunity? And that's where Edelman is like the 100% like you want to watch a player who finally got the opportunity and took it and ran with it, that's Julian Edelman.
yeah. No, I think what you're arguing is like what I was saying before, of like if what the Hall of Fame should be, as opposed to what it actually realistically is. And I would agree with you on that. I guess I was originally arguing from the side of like what is actually going to happen and will he get in based on all these other players? Because there's
Mhm.
a backlog in the way that they let people in. But like in terms of what it should be, like yeah, I agree with that. It's a very important player with what you're talking about, where they took advantage of the opportunities they got, and also that they were an integral part of Super Bowl and playoff and everything else history in terms of the NFL. I just think
Mhm.
it's a realistic thing that's just yeah, he's not going to get in, and that kind of sucks. But that's the way the NFL Hall of Fame is, and maybe if they could reconfigure that, that's a time for another or a discussion for another day. I don't
Uh,
even know the entire process. Do you know it in and out? Like I know there's
I
just such a limited amount each year.
it's yeah, it's just you have a certain amount of votes that you can give, and it's that's basically it. It's just you have a certain amount of votes you can give, so it's kind of unfortunate because if some guys, that's why you can be on the ballot multiple times. Because for instance, if Heinz Ward was on the ballot when Calvin Johnson and Larry Fitzgerald and Randy Moss are on the ballot, then you go like, okay, well, he's literally got no shot. Like, if you can only accept three receivers and those three receivers are there, and then he's
Exactly.
fourth, is not happening.
Yes.
That's where it's the issue. That's in my opinion, that's where some of the issue lies because like if you have like it just you have to include players that made such an incredible difference and have like and again he has just those like that iconic play against the Falcons, as well as just all the other moments that he came up huge
I
and was
wish we could show it. That catches. I rewatching it. I
it's
forgot how crazy it was.
it's stupid. It's so stupid. When I